And welcome back. We are joined for our first conversation for the day by representatives from Beltrade. We have in studio today Ms. Shauna Arnold, who is the Export Promotion Officer at Beltrade, and Mr. John Rivero, who is a representative of the Foreign Trade Directorate of the Ministry of Investment, Commerce and Trade. Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes. Thank you for being here. Sure. So you're here to talk to us about the CARICOM CET Suspension, and for our general population who are not sure what exactly that means, give us a little bit of background on what CARICOM is and how it ties in with a CET suspension.
Okay. Well, the CARICOM region is it's the collection of 15 member states from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And so it's the Treaty of Chaguaramas. Pretty much dictates what goes on when it relates to trade and other issues for the region. The common external tariff, it's a standard feature for any free trade area, yeah, where you have a common customs union and you share. You pretty much sharing the issues concerning trade, and at the end of the day, whatever goods come into any part of the region faces the same tariff. So whatever goods come into Jamaica would have the same tariff that comes into Belize, and that's the common external tariff.
Okay, and I know that Belize has been a part of CARICOM for years now, since its inception, and I know that for a lot of people, CARICOM is still a very foreign concept. So talk to us a little bit about our involvement in CARICOM. I know that you're here mostly to talk about the issues of relating to trade, but talking about trade, how involved has Belize been in terms of contributing to the policies, contributing to the different aspects of the common external tariff and the COTED?
Right. Now, COTED is a meeting to discuss trade issues, and it's held twice a year. And it's a very important meeting because that's where you get to iron out all issues on trade, yeah, and problems that you may have. Now, it's most people, like you said, most people are not aware, but we do significant trade in the region. We've been exporting something like $350 million over the last 5 years, wow, of goods all over the Caribbean, and we import much less than that, like 290. So we have a trade surplus, something like 50 million over the last 5 years. Oh, wow. So it's a fairly healthy trade arrangement that we have within the region, and that's why we're keen on promoting trade. We're keen on making the stakeholders, the private sector, aware of other opportunities that's out there.
Now, the idea of the CET suspension, how do we localize this to where the average Belizean understands exactly what is taking place both at a local level and at a regional level?
What we've been doing is, like John mentioned, you have a set amount of tariffs for any goods coming into the CARICOM region. You also have a suspension on that tariff. Like, let's say, for example, Trinidad is hoping to import corn from an extra-regional country. But for some reason, they cannot source it within the Caribbean, or within CARICOM, I should say. What they would do is they would ask for a suspension of that tariff on that corn that is coming in. What happens then is COTED then sends something out to all the representatives from the CARICOM region in Belize, or this is the Directorate for Foreign Trade. It sends something out to them to say, before we can suspend this, or before we can reduce the tariff, we want to find out if any other CARICOM member states have this product to supply them. What we've been doing with that is the list of suspensions that come in for the particular products. We've been looking at the trends of those. And with that, we're hoping, we started initially with a pilot project where we presented it to a targeted group of people looking at the particular products that they could take advantage of. Some of those products include, at the top of the list were pharmaceuticals, you had raw cane sugar, white refined cane sugar, coconut oil, soybean oil,
oils.
vegetable oil. What we did is to look at those that we would consider low-hanging fruits for Belize. That either it would be easy for us to start investing in, or that we've already been investing in and working with, that we just have to increase our production to then possibly supply the Caribbean.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want to backtrack a little bit to what John was talking about earlier, how we're in a really healthy trade in climate right now. And I know that that probably has a lot to do with Beltrade and the advocacy you're doing with small business, the private sector, to export to the Caribbean and tap into that market. So can you tell us a little bit about those endeavors that Beltrade has been working towards?
Of course, the unit that I work along with is Export Belize. And our main objective is facilitating exports. So we work with the private sector or with entrepreneurs that are looking into the export market. We provide research to them, export counseling, export coaching to get them ready for that export market. We also assist them in doing market access requirements, finding out if you're interested in a particular market. We find out what are the requirements for you to get into that market, different things like that, whether it's labeling, whether it's quality standards. We look at different things like that and see how we can assist you guys in exporting.
That sounds good. So as it relates to the CET suspension, it can be any product that is distributed across the region. And you talked about pharmaceuticals, you talked about agriculture. What are some of the markets that, from your perspective, the technical perspective, that Belize has the potential to tap into?
Here's one of the things about pharmaceutical. That's a good example, because it's a huge industry, it's a huge import.
Yeah, it is.
I think there's something like $1 billion was imported in 2015 within the region. Now the hope is that Belize can attract investors, a company, to invest in Belize, to build facilities here, and tap into that market. It's a huge market. We can tap into that market and produce in Belize, and you get the region as a marketplace. There's like the oils that she mentioned, like the palm oil. Palm oil is kind of destructive to the environment and the cultivation. However, there's a lot of palm oil that's produced in Central America. One project is to again import the raw palm oil, the crude palm oil, and refine it
here
in Belize and export it to the region. There was something like $200 million, I believe, that was imported in the region in 2015. Palm oil. That's like a new industry right here. That would be significant growth addition to Belize's export.
When you look at it from the perspective of foreign direct investment, for instance, you look at the idea that Belizeans may not necessarily have the startup money to really delve into these kinds of industries. So you would need investors from outside of the country to infuse monies that would be able to create these specific industries, as you've mentioned, either pharmaceutical or the palm oil industry. In terms of helping or raising that awareness that these are industries that can very much be viable in Belize, how do you go about doing that?
What we've been doing, like I mentioned, we've been having targeted sessions. We started with one targeted session, particularly in Spanish cocoa. Like I mentioned earlier, we're starting to look at those products that we consider low-hanging fruits. Particularly, we have palm oil, like John mentioned, soybean oil, coconut oil, and we also have sunflower oil. Through some of the research that we've been doing, we've been realizing that some of the producers in Spanish cocoa are already doing soybean oil and sunflower oil. So with that, we made a presentation to them just to see, a pilot presentation, just to see how well it would have been received. And with that, we started a discussion of what it would take for that investment, what they would need from us, more information, what that investment would look like in terms of a money value. So different things like that we're looking at. So we had that one targeted session. We're hoping to have another one tomorrow in the northern part of the country, particularly in the Blue Creek area. What we realized, though, is that instead of just having targeted sessions, this is information that the general public needs to be aware of. This is something that, particularly coconut oil, several people have been doing coconut oil. That is something that they can benefit from. So what we've been doing is we realize that we can put these trends or these suspensions as they come in on our website so people can have access to them and look at the trends of what product is being requested, how often it's being requested, the quantity that's being requested, so they know the investment they would need to put in for something like this to happen.
And so far, how large has the buy-in been? Like, I know that for a lot of small businesses, especially, the idea of exporting is so grandiose and so far-fetched. And while it seems extremely beneficial both financially and developmentally, it's also very not low-hanging fruit for them. How do you encourage that buy-in, and what has the buy-in been like so far?
We've had, well, I can recall a couple examples of farms that have managed to export recently. There was a farm that exported peanuts. I don't think it's doing that anymore, but they became organic. They gained the organic certification, and they exported peanuts for a while. Sometimes it seems like a grand endeavor, but sometimes it's not really. And the hope is too that if a new industry arises, there's always the possibility of cluster business where you don't have to be exporting yourself, but you can support the business in services, in addition, product, selling your products to that company. Like, for example, let's talk about Belcar, for example. It's Spanish local.
They do a lot of rice and beans,
a lot of beans and corn, and they've grown significantly over the last 5 years. It's just they've managed to work together, and well, it's easier for them to work together, and they're building that company up really fast, and they're exporting all the way to the Middle East now, Egypt and all that. There's a small company in Toledo that's opened up last year, and they're exporting turmeric to Canada.
Yes, I've heard. Yeah, I'm aware of it.
And that happened in 1 year. But she has some expertise, and
I think in general, I mean, it's just the hand-holding that we provide, the support that the trade support organizations provide to them, to start locally and then to branch off if you feel that you've satisfied the local market and know that you can then supply the export market. And of course, some of it does take some investment from you, but if you find the demand out there, that investment may be worth it at the end of the day.
For sure. Talk to us a little bit more about the foreign investment and the potential for foreign investment. I know that for Belize, we have so many markets that we can tap into, and we have so much to offer to the Caribbean. I mean, we look at the other CARICOM countries, they're very small. They mostly have sun, sand, and beach. And we have sun, sand, beach, rainforest, everything. We have all
and agriculture.
Exactly. What are some of the areas that Belize and Beltrade and the DFT is looking to attract foreign investors to potentially tap into, besides the pharmaceutical and the oil making sectors?
I know Beltrade has the incentive program, and to be honest, how exactly they reach out, or what they're, I'm not sure, to be honest.
We recently launched our investment platform, or investment portfolio. And this is a platform where entrepreneurs can go on and they can pitch their investment concept. And from that, it could then be picked up, and then they can receive assistance in working with that project, or developing it, or fleshing it out. But some of the investment in the region, what happened is last week we did a presentation to our investment unit at Beltrade to show them some of these potential opportunities within the Caribbean. So this is an investment for people coming in to Belize to start investing possibly in some of these products, and then exporting them out. So these are also, as long as they're export opportunities, but they're also investment opportunities as well that they can possibly benefit from.
Sorry, go ahead.
One of the avenues we've used in the past is try to reach out through the embassies in foreign countries, foreign trade, try to package information along with Beltrade, and we share that with the embassies and to see if we can get investors. I know Mexico, an embassy in Mexico, in London, in New York, they have Taiwan also. Exactly, Taiwan is a very good example, where they have these seminars, these workshops that invite investors to know about what's available in Belize.
When you look at these specific industries and the idea of foreign direct investment to get these businesses off the ground, you mentioned earlier the need for satisfying the local market and then moving on to export.
Right.
Is there any provision or allowances for companies that would only be providing goods for export as opposed to providing or satisfying the local demand?
Well, that's where Export Belize would come in. We assist them particularly with the export market and the requirements to get into the export market. Like you mentioned, not all products or not all companies are interested in the local market. Their supply is too great for the local market, so with that they look into export markets. So that is where we'd come in and we'd provide some sort of technical assistance to them, capacity building services, anything like that we would provide to them.
So we want to delve a little bit more into the CET suspension from the perspective of the DFT. We know that there are certain requirements that need to be satisfied before you can apply, the intent to supply can be satisfied. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
One of the biggest difficulty we would come up with is there would be standards attached to each product. So it would take some investment and it would take some expertise to meet the standards, obviously. So for example, they would ask for RK beans, just an example, and it would say it has to be this color and this size and this amount of moisture, and it applies to a lot of products. So it takes some you need investment to get these things to certain standards. But some things are easier. Like I learned, like turmeric powder in itself. There's not a high. Well, it's easier to meet the standards. That would be an example. And grains, we do very well with grains, with the corn, the beans. We can meet the standards, no problem. But standards is definitely a hurdle to exporting.
So let me ask a question here. Are these standards set regionally, or is it based on the country's own requirements for certain goods, for instance?
The standards should be international standards. They should be. And so once in a while you'll find a company, like a supermarket chain, let's say in UK, that says, well, that may add their own additional standards. And that's a difficulty. It's a growing difficulty in the world of trade right now, because you have these chains of companies that have their own personal, they have their quality standards that the producers have to meet. But generally speaking, most standards in the world are based on international set standards.
Perfect.
And as it relates to standards, and I'm going to piggyback off of Isani's question for a little bit. As it relates to coated and our participation in CARICOM, can you tell us a little bit about how that happens, how often it is, and what our contributions look like?
Well, as I mentioned, the coated meetings are held twice a year. We have representatives from our ministry that goes there. Usually the minister, CEO, the director would be a part of this. And so it's a week of discussions, of ironing out issues, of coming up with answers to regional problems when it comes to trade. There is a trade, like I said, trade coated twice a year, but it's also agricultural coated, where the Ministry of Agriculture meets with other ministries, and they discuss the issues concerned that arises from production in region. Now, Belize's, how do we provide input to that? Belize would raise issues. For example, there's like I mentioned, the standards can be a problem. The chicken, we're trying to export chicken to the region, so that would come up, and the region has been working on certifying and coming up with.
There? I hate to interject. It's just a thought that came to mind as you mentioned chicken. No, wasn't there an initiative? Let's say a few years ago. I believe it would have been coming from one of the huge poultry companies locally to export to the regional market.
Correct. Several of the poultry producers, or one in particular that comes to mind, has actually been putting in quality standards. The HACCP international standards. They've actually been putting different things in place and changing up their, improving their facility to help them become more ready for the export market. But like John mentioned, there's some of the challenges that they've been facing, I think, regionally. On their end, most of them, you know, have been putting in these standards so that they're more ready for the market. But then we have some of the challenges that we're facing that John is talking about that have been inhibiting them from reaching these markets.
And what I can say though, the poultry industry is coming up to the standards that are set by the region, and they should be exporting, I would say, in 1 or 2 years.
Okay.
And that's the intention.
And of course, with anything, there are challenges. But you mentioned earlier that we are in a healthy trade climate. Can you tell us a little bit about the platform that allowed us to be in the position that we are right now, and how we can continue that trend? Maybe you can talk about it from the perspective of Beltrade, Shauna, and then you can pick up, John.
Of course. Well, with CARICOM, you know, that we have some of the products that are going into CARICOM is duty free. And with that, this allows us to have a healthy trade relationship with them. I mean, this gives us an advantage over those countries that are, those extra regional countries that are importing to them that have to pay a duty. So with that, that is some of the things that assist us with CARICOM. Also, we've had several workshops that assist some of the companies that we've been working with to export to CARICOM, some of the requirements that they've needed to export. We're looking at, we've had a good manufacturing practices session. We had different sessions like that have increased their capacity to export to CARICOM, and not only CARICOM, but other international markets as well.
Definitely.
The free trade arrangement is what allows us to push our goods out there. And also geography. Well, we have the space. We have the geographical space in Belize to produce these things like corn, beans, and the region, they don't have that much, they don't have the area.
Right.
The area. Guyana and Suriname can. But that's why I think we have an advantage, and our trade can grow so much more because of this quality of soil that we have and the area that we have to cultivate. Yeah.
Do you find that more and more Belizeans are moving into the agro-productive sector? When you look at the fact that there is an abundance of arable land, for instance, and the need to provide that supply for the other countries who don't have these resources at hand, do you find that Belizeans are gravitating towards farming, towards agro-production and that sort of stuff?
I definitely think they are, and not just agriculture alone, but agro-processing as well. The value added that they get from that agricultural product. We see a lot of people have been moving towards some of this area. This is things like the pepper sauces, we have the rums, different things like that, different agricultural products that then you add value to it to get that agro-processing sector. We see a lot more have been gravitating towards it, as well as the agriculture sector as well. Like John said, there's great potential in the Caribbean for these industries.
I look at the Caribbean and I see a lot of growth and development. We see manufacturing companies, they bottle and can every single thing. What steps do you think Belize needs to take in order to get to that level where we utilize our landmass, we tap into the sector of manufacturing, we look into new industries that can, you know, build our economy and create more jobs and create more industries on a whole? What are some of the steps that you think we're missing, some of the fruits that we're not really gravitating towards?
Some companies are slowly moving that direction. I know the intention, there is the intent to can beans, because we do provide the beans when I can it too. So there's, like I said, there's turmeric paste being bottled and exported. There's these are new products I'm referring to. Chicken is going to be exported pretty soon. We like you said, we need investment. First of all, it's not something that just can happen overnight. And it's the thing to also, like the things that you mentioned, the bottles, the cans, the boxes. We don't produce those, so they got to be sought out and imported. There's an incentive, I believe, to provide importers to give them duty-free access to some of these goods. So there's some opportunities out there that's being provided by the government through Beltrade also to try and help to develop the agro-processing sector.
So, for instance, if you look at Marie Sharp's peppers, for argument's sake, the pepper sauce is produced, the peppers and everything are grown locally.
Okay.
The sauce is produced here. However, the labeling and the bottles, those aren't manufactured in Belize, so those would have to be imported into the country. The government provides an incentive or some kind of relief on those duties. Is that how it works?
Correct. We recently too have been looking, we have a cabinet paper for packaging equipment and packaging material. So that's something that's still in the pipeline that's being discussed at this time, which would assist a lot of companies. Like John mentioned, we don't produce bottles here, the lids, we don't produce any of that here. So to bring that in, that would greatly assist them. So we're hoping to have that paper passed and with that to assist some of our companies. But yes, there is an incentive through a fiscal incentive program at Beltrade that assists them with different things like this.
Perfect. So let's wrap this conversation up then. What would be the most important takeaway for viewers at home right now from this discussion in terms of learning and understanding what CET suspension is?
To look at the trends and to look at those products that is being asked for or being requested, and to see how best we can benefit from it. Like I mentioned earlier, what we're hoping to do is launch on our website a brief introduction on the CET suspension, on the CET, the tariff, the suspension, what it is, and how they can benefit from it. We're also hoping to have, as I think suspension come in like maybe every other day or every week, we have suspensions that come in. And with that, we're hoping to place the suspension on our website. So this will have the company that's requesting a particular product, what country they're from, the quantities, the quality that they're looking for. We're hoping to place that the entire request as it comes in from CARICOM or from COTED, we're hoping to place it on our website. And with that, those people that may be interested, those companies that are interested, have a 7-day window in which they're able to submit a form. That form will also be on our website where they can let us know if they have the intent to supply. From that point, someone will be in contact with them. That form then goes to our Export Belize office as well as to John, and we get in contact with them to see how we can get the ball rolling to see if they can actually supply. Because we do have that 7-day window in which we need to respond to COTED to let them know if Belize can or cannot supply.
And just off the top right now, what are some of the industries that you would like to encourage small businesses, whoever is interested, to really tap into and reach out to Beltrade to get on the CET suspension movement?
There's a lot of, like she mentioned, there's a lot of requests for oil. There's a huge demand for the vegetable oils, palm oil, coconut oil. There's a CARICOM program right now to develop the coconut industry that's going on in Belize right now. They could look into that. That falls under the Ministry for Agriculture. There's soybean oil, sunflower oil. They just need to be aware of some of these things. And so it's one thing to note also is that the request for the suspensions is basically an indicator of the trend of what's out there. The demand is actually bigger, much bigger than that. A company in CARICOM region does not have to, they can pay the tariff and not request for suspension CET. A lot of companies do that. So looking at the entire demand is important. And we can provide that information also.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We need to wrap this segment up.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, and it was a very informative conversation in terms of what is out there for Belizean entrepreneurs to tap into within the region.
But quickly before we leave, can you give viewers the opportunity to visit your website to get more information where they can find you?
Of course, they can visit our website at www.belizeinvest.org/Export Belize. When they go on that Export Belize page, just below our logo or just below the Export Belize, they'll see CET suspension. If they click on that, they'll find all the necessary information as well as the form and the suspension itself that they can fill out and submit to us.
And of course, they can have access to the sensitization workshops and workshops.
Correct. The one we're having tomorrow, it's a closed session, but the first two that we had, we're just looking at so we can then have other sessions as well as they come along.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Shauna.
Thank you.
Very informative, very important for us to be aware of all the incentives, all the benefits that we have under CARICOM and the CSME. So we really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So we are going to take a really quick break and come back in just a few, so stay with us.